glad to see that while not our number is not as big as it often is, we still have a lot of people, and I trust that those who are not with us are actually traveling or something, or not just gone fishing or something like that. You know, Sunday tends to be a popular time to go fishing, it seems. How many of you enjoy fishing? You know, I enjoy fishing too, but I have to confess something to you. I am probably one of the world's worst fishermen. I am bad. I don't know what it is. I think that, quit nodding your head, Peter. I don't know what it is, but for some reason, whenever I go fishing, the fish leave. You want to get rid of fish in the ocean or you know, the lake, just have me fish. They go to the other side. They go someplace else. You know, but I keep at it, right? I keep at it, and occasionally, I manage to snag one. And it's such a surprise when it happens. You know, I'm just like, oh, I caught a fish. Because for me, to catch a fish is a big deal. For others, they just throw in their line, you know, it's 1, 2, 3. But for me, wow. So I keep at it because it's that joy of the catch when it happens, right? Surprises, John 21:4, my memory verse today. It's coming up soon, I can see. It's not on this monitor. Can you get this monitor going? It's on, but it's just not on. Okay. It says, early in the morning, Jesus stood on the shore, but the disciples did not realize that it was Jesus. They didn't realize that it was Jesus. He was out there. Does it ever happen to us, I wonder? Where we are in a situation and we just forget that Jesus is there. Or maybe we don't look for Jesus in a situation. We don't realize that He's around. I love this verse, though, because it is such a surprise. It's to us, the surprise is coming. These disciples are going to see something amazing happen that's going to come along. But the thing is that they didn't realize at first this amazing event that's going to come about. They don't realize who they're fishing with. But that's because of His presence. Their fishing trip is about to be miraculous. Yeah, that's pretty much what happens when someone goes fishing with Jesus. Fishing with Jesus. It's not the name of the 70s TV show that I'm trying to say, Fishing with Jesus. It's the first of 2 sermons about one event that comes prior to Pentecost. Now, a little bit of background. Jesus has spent 3 years in ministry with these disciples, right? They've walked with Him day after day after day. And then the crucifixion happens. And at the crucifixion, suddenly they're lost. During that period, from the crucifixion to another festival called Pentecost, from basically Passover, which happened right after the crucifixion, to Pentecost, there's 50 days, a 50-day time period. And in that time period, we see Christ resurrect, and then we see Him occasionally visiting the disciples, coming to talk with them, etc. This event takes place right in that 50-day period. But I want you to think about it. What would life have been like for you after walking for every day with Jesus for 3 years? To suddenly have Him crucified and then come back and then just pop in occasionally. Your life would be on an emotional roller coaster, right? And basically that's what the disciples were. They were on an emotional roller coaster because, you know, what was going to be the new normal? What was going to be the new normal for the disciples? Basically what happens is they go back to what they do know. They go back to fishing. Christ had come and seen them a couple of times, but and this is going to be the third time. But they know what to do. They know what to do. They know to fish, and so that's what they go back to. Let's read the first part of this story. John 21, 1 through 14. It says, "Afterward, Jesus appeared again to his disciples by the Sea of Galilee. And it happened this way. Simon Peter, Thomas, also known as Didymus, Nathanael from Cana in Galilee, the sons of Zebedee, and 2 other disciples were together. 'I'm going out to fish,' Simon Peter told them. And they said, 'We'll go with you.' So they went out and got into the boat. But that night they caught nothing. Early in the morning Jesus stood on the shore, but the disciples did not realize that it was Jesus. He called out to them, 'Friends, haven't you any fish?' 'No,' they answered. He said, 'Throw your net on the right side of the boat, and you will find some.' But when they did, they were unable to haul the net in because of the large number of fish. Then the disciple whom Jesus loved said to Peter, 'It's the Lord.' As soon as Simon Peter heard him say, 'It's the Lord,' he wrapped his outer garment around him, for he had taken it off, and jumped into the water. The other disciples followed in the boat, towing the net full of fish, for they were not far from the shore, about 100 yards. When they landed, they saw a fire of burning coals there, with fish on it and some bread. Jesus said to them, 'Bring some of the fish you just caught.' So Simon Peter climbed back into the boat and dragged the net ashore. It was full of large fish, 153. But even with so many, the net was not torn. Jesus said to them, 'Come and have breakfast.' None of the disciples dared ask him, 'Who are you?' They knew it was the Lord. Jesus came, took the bread, and gave it to them, and did the same with the fish. This was now the third time Jesus appeared to his disciples after he was raised from the dead. Now, on the surface, this looks like a fairly simple, miraculous, yes, but fairly simple story. But the thing is, rarely in the Bible are stories always that simple. The more you read the Bible, the more you understand it and study it, the more you see that the Bible speaks on a lot of different levels. There's a lot of different things going on in this story. And like a lot of different passages, as I say in the Bible, there's a gold mine of truths to be gleaned from here. There's 4 that I want to focus on today. They're just waiting to be discovered for us. And that first one is this: we can't fish without Him. We can't fish without Him. You know, we can go out, I can go out and throw a line in the water, and maybe if I'm skillful enough, I can maybe catch the fish. But if we're going to be really catching the kind of fish God wants us to catch, we can't do that alone. We can't engage in ministry alone. We can't decide, oh, I think it's a really good idea to have this program or that program, and start it out and expect it to be successful. It won't be. Because without Jesus, it's pointless. Without Jesus involved in the ministry, without Jesus at the heart of what you're doing, it's pointless. These men are experienced. They've grown up with this. I mean, it talks about Zebedee being a fisherman. James and John, his sons, I mean, they grew up in the trade. It's possible that Peter and Andrew did too. They knew this stuff. And yet they're having a bad night, right? Or is it also an opportunity for God to teach a lesson? You know, Christ was a master teacher. And in teaching methodology, we often study Christ and we see just the different ways as a teacher He's being effective. And one of the things that He loves to do is use object lessons. If you don't know what an object lesson is, an object lesson is either using a regular, let's say a cell phone, and me trying to give you an illustration, teach you a lesson based upon the cell phone, or taking something that you know. For instance, if I was going to talk to you guys about, try to teach you something really deep, I may use many of your students, so I may use an illustration from school. Jesus knew that a lot of the people understood about shepherding. So he talked about shepherding things, and he used shepherding images. One time, he used a coin. So when he asked, well, should we pay taxes? Was it right to pay taxes? And he said, well, look at the coin. Bring me a coin. He brought a coin. He said, okay, whose picture is on the coin? He said, well, it's Caesar's. And he said, well, render unto Caesar's what is Caesar's, and render unto God what is God's. He was using an object. He was using a situation to teach. Here, he's using the lesson of fish. He's using something that these disciples know. They understand fishing. But what was Jesus teaching them? Well, first of all, as I said, that they can't do it really. They can't fish in the way that Jesus wants them to fish without Him. What would have happened if Christ hadn't shown up? If He had resurrected, let's say, but it never appeared to the disciples? What if they had just tried to, I don't know, keep this idea going by themselves? Do you think it would have been successful? Not without Christ. It would have failed miserably. But with Christ, what happened? When we see the disciples filled with Christ and carrying that on into their daily lives, week before last we talked about incarnational Christianity, right? When we saw them living out Christ's love, living out Christ in society, we see Rome, the mightiest empire on the planet, coming from a very small city on the Italian peninsula and moving out and completely into Africa, into Asia. I mean, it was huge. It was powerful. You can't go against it. And yet Christianity comes in and transforms it from the inside out, so that by the time Rome falls eventually, you have Christianity just spreading across the globe. Power, transformational power through Christ. These fish could have never been caught without Christ. And He's teaching them here in a very interesting object lesson. You can't do anything without me. He told them they would be fishers of men, and this is a very clear reminder of their dependence on Him. You know, we can easily fall into this trap. How many times have you decided that you want to do something, and then you pray for God to bless it? That's backwards, isn't it? Shouldn't we pray for God's direction, and then go in that direction, and then ask His blessing on it, because that's where He's led us? But how many times do we plan something, and then we just throw it, oh, and God bless what I'm about to do? It's backwards. It's not letting Him be the master, but it's putting us in the driver's seat. When I was fundraising originally to go to Senegal, I learned something, by the way, about fundraising. I can't raise a cab fare. I'm a terrible fundraiser. But I came up with what I thought were clever ideas. You know, Senegal, one of its chief products is peanuts. So I thought, oh, here's what I'll do, is I'll cut out these little peanuts, you know, out of some kind of cardboard or something like that, and paint them up really well. And use slogans like, you know, support a missionary for peanuts. And then give them a peanut, you know. Hey, it should work, right? Advertising campaign. Or how about nuts for Senegal? Nuts for Senegal. Or support a nut. You know, that would work, right? I didn't get a dime using that method. Not a dime. But when I didn't expect money, people are writing me checks. And they're handing me cash. Nothing that I'm doing, but what God's doing. When I leave it to God, He brings it in. When I try to do it myself, nothing works. It's the thing about working with God. So, we can't fish without Him. We can't be effective without Him. The second lesson, though, here is this. Christ is Lord of the catch. Christ is Lord of the catch. See, these guys caught nothing by themselves, but with Christ, they caught more than they could normally handle. Right? With Christ, they caught much more than they could normally handle. When we serve God faithfully, when we are obeying Him without question, miracles can happen. We might even be a bit overwhelmed with what God is doing. Back in the late 1950s, mid-1950s, a young boy from Minnesota, tall, blonde hair, Scandinavian American, named Bruce Olson. 16 years old, sitting in a church service, here's a missionary talking about Papua New Guinea, of all the places, and is suddenly struck with the fact that he is called. He needs to go to South America and reach these Indian tribes. Okay? Got this call to missions. Starts college. He's 19 years old in college, burning with this desire to go. And he applies to mission organization, and he talks to his parents, etc. And everybody's saying, you don't have to train. You're 19. You're 19 years old. Get some more education, everything else, maybe. But, you know, there's no way. But he's got this fever to follow God, to follow Jesus, and he feels this passion. And so, against all advice, people thinking he's nuts, he buys a plane ticket and heads for Colombia. He has no financial backing. He has hardly any money. He doesn't speak Spanish. He's heading toward Colombia to work with the Indians. Sounds crazy, right? He gets there, and he tries to approach the Motilone Indians, who in their own language they call themselves the Body. These Indians are, well, they're used to hating white people and outsiders. And so anybody who comes into their area, they kill. The old explorers, they were going there because the land they live on is really rich in oil. And the explorers would go out there and they'd have their helmets on and everything. And they killed the explorers and used their helmets for soup pots. I mean, they just, you know, these guys are vicious. Bruce gets in there and they don't welcome him with open arms. They shoot him with an arrow in the leg. And he miraculously, even though it gets infected, etc., he doesn't die. He ends up crawling out of the jungle, basically getting some help, and then goes right back. Eventually, they accept him to be there. But he doesn't come in as, let me tell you guys about Jesus. Let me just, I'm the expert, I'm going to come in and convert you. He doesn't come in that way. He comes in incarnationally. He comes in as a learner. He comes in as a student. Teach me your ways. And he learns their ways. He struggles with the language. He's a gifted linguist. But it takes him 2 years because the language is so difficult. He does things. He sees someone suffering medically, and he figures out a way culturally so no one's going to lose face, so that they will come up with a discovery, or they will ask him for something. He does things so almost just off the cuff in a very culturally appropriate way that to this day, anthropologists are still shaking their head. How in the world did he know it with no education? God. But he begins to build this trust with these people. Not wanting to come in as the expert, he works with his pact brother, and he begins teaching his pact brother, talking with his pact brother about God. Eventually his pact brother comes to Christ, and in something straight out of the book of Acts, his pact brother goes to this festival that for 14 hours he's singing and sharing and soaring in this big challenge. And the people hear the gospel in a culturally appropriate way that they can understand. And they respond in mass. He ends up training people. The Indians end up going into universities and coming back as doctors and lawyers and health workers and working with the people and teachers, and the whole tribe is transformed. And then other tribes in the area latch on to what Bruce is doing, and they get involved, and they want to learn more. And I mean, this guy's like a national hero. And then the communist rebels capture him. And you know what they want from him? Hey, we want you to get these Indians to follow us to overthrow the government. He's not going to do that because he's Bruce. And so, being Bruce, he sees their situation. He sees the people that a lot of these soldiers are young people that they don't know how to read, a lot of them. They don't know how to survive on the land very well. And so he looks around and says, hey, so you want me to cook for you? I've lived here for a while. I know how to do things. And so he knows how to make smoked rubbed sauce, which supposedly is pretty good. And take dried bananas and make flour out of them and all these different kinds of things. And their food actually improves. It sounds horrible, I realize. But their food, imagine what they were eating before that, actually improves. He begins training them with medical techniques. He begins teaching them how to read, etc. The guerrillas keep passing to different different guerrilla groups because they don't want him to get too chummy with the other soldiers. But it doesn't matter because everywhere he goes, people love him. By the time he leaves, about 60% of the rebels have come to Christ. Finally, they just give up on him after torturing him, killing other people, etc. They realize, we're not going to break this guy. We made a mistake. Besides that, the Indians, because they've taken Bruce from them, Bruchko is what they named him. They've taken Bruchko from them. The Indians have risen up in mass. They formed a federation. They said, you better give him back. Finally, he's given back, and the presidents of Venezuela and Colombia welcomed him home. Meanwhile, the Indians declare to the rebels and the drug traffickers and all the others that have been encroaching in this area, they said, by December, you need to be gone. If not, you will go to war with all of us. And by the way, there are 500,000 of us. Bruce is 75 now. The power, though, of Christ working through one individual can transform a society. You know, it seems just too miraculous when we might get overwhelmed with what God will do when He gets a hold of us. And when He begins to come along like this alongside of us. God has used Bruce Olson to catch a lot of fish. The disciples, you see here, are catching a lot of fish too, but notice the net that they had didn't break. Despite all of this, despite this huge catch, the net's not breaking. God always provides the means to accomplish His will. Just like He provided with Bruce, the means to accomplish His will through all of this. God is always providing the means to accomplish His will. When we were called to Japan, it was one of those situations we were praying about, what would God want for us? And we were pretty established, we thought, where we were. And God had said, you need to go back to the mission field. And so we said, okay, but you know we don't have any money. You know that to do this, we're going to need more education. I'm going to need more education, more Bible education, etc. And I don't know how I can do that and go back. And then God began opening doors. He began opening the doors so that the Japanese would pay us. We didn't have to raise money. The Japanese would pay us to come. Not only that, there was a school, a seminary, a Bible college that would allow me to study in Japan and do it all by correspondence, etc. I just worked it all out because God was in it. God was there making this happen. So, we can't fish without Him. And He's Lord of the catch. But number 3, we also learn from this passage that Jesus is Lord of the fishermen. Jesus is Lord of the fishermen. Christ calls, and they listen. They hear. And when they figure out that it's Jesus who's doing the calling, notice Peter's excitement. Impulsive as ever, he grabs his robe, he jumps in. But let's not dismiss the others. It wasn't like they weren't following either. They're following too, right? They're just bringing the boat and trying to haul this huge thing of fish with them. The question comes up here is, how eager are we to get to Jesus? When Christ calls, how eager are you to follow? Or do you come up with excuses? Do we let the things of life get in the way? You know, I've had people, and it happens more than I would like, but I've had people tell me sometimes they really feel that maybe God is tugging at them, but they're going to turn their life around later. They're going to turn their life around later. They've got too many things they're doing right now. Too many things they want to get accomplished. And you know what? I just got to get my head, I just got to get focused before I really can give my life to God. I really follow. It's a wrong idea, people. First things first. Get your life right with God. He'll bring everything else in line. But we do this. Peter, first things first, man, get to Jesus. That's what he wants to do. Of course, remember that God doesn't want us to use Him as an excuse to neglect things that He's called us to do. All right? Nor does He wish us to let other workers do all the work. He tells Peter, for example, to go back and help. He says, bring some of the fish. You see, Peter goes back. He gets back in the boat. He helps. He brings those fish to shore as well. To his credit, he obeys instantly. Do we? When God tells you to do something, do you obey instantly? Or do you put it up? Do you rationalize it? Can't be. I told this story a few years ago, but I thank you. But I met a man one time who'd been called. I'd been speaking at a church. Came up to me and said that he had been called to go to the mission field. He knew without a shadow of a doubt God said go. But he had just signed a new contract for a new job. And they had just been starting building the house. And this. So he kept putting off God's call. 20 years later, he's got this successful position. He's got this successful thing. He's got a nice house. But he's got an ache inside. Because he did not listen to God's call. And so I tell him, I say, it's not too late. Follow him now. You know what his response was? Oh, I can't really do it right now. You see, I've got this and this and this. He never learned. It's one of the saddest stories I can tell. A man who missed his chance because he kept saying no to the call in his life for God. Don't miss your chance. Could be that God's calling you right now to do something. God's been speaking to you. God's been saying, I want this for you. Don't rationalize, don't put it off. Don't say, well, if the timing's not right. If God's calling you now, the timing is right now. No excuses. Be a Bruce Olson. Follow him. Also, notice the disciples' reverence here. It says they didn't dare question his identity. They knew who he was. Sometimes we struggle with wondering, is this of God? Is this calling of God? Is Jesus really telling me what to do? The thing is, the closer you are to Him, the more you realize who's talking. Not you, not Satan, not the world. The closer you are to God, you realize it's His voice. But that requires effort on our part, doesn't it? We have to determine to get closer to God. We have to work at it. We have to spend time with the Lord. We can't put it off. We can't say that, oh, I just don't have time to do my quiet time with God. I just don't have time to pray. I just don't. That's the most important task you have during the day, is spending time with God and learning His will for your life. Everything else is secondary. The fourth thing that we learn here is that Jesus always meets His fishermen's needs. Sometimes the waters God calls us to fish in can seem difficult, even dangerous. But He always provides and He always protects. Notice that He invited them to dine with Him around the fire. So it's hot fishing. They've been fishing all night. They're cold. They're wet. Right? But who's on the shore with a comforting fire? Saying, come. Come for nourishment. Come for warmth. Come for fellowship. Come for safety. Come for acceptance. Not only that, Jesus comes to them with the fish and the bread. He doesn't just say, hey, yeah, there it is. Make yourself a sandwich. Right? No. He serves them. He comes to them with the fish. He comes to them with the bread. Once again, it's almost like the Last Supper, right? It's almost like the Last Supper repeated, of where He's coming and serving them. Another object lesson in servant leadership. We also see that the catch the Lord provided is massive. 153 fish. What? You ever wonder why they counted? Theologians have gone over this over and over. What's significant? 153. Let me see if we take this and divide it by. No one knows. Except the fact that it was so significant. It was 153 fish. There's a lot of fish. Right? And not only that, they're not the little minnows. These are large fish. 153 humongous large fish. Wow. And the net didn't break. Now, you say, okay, what's the big deal? Fishing is their livelihood, right? You take 153 large fish and you divide it among these few fishermen. Wow, that's the catch of the year. That's great. They can take that. They can not only eat what they need, but they can sell them. They can provide for their families. See, Jesus is into all of this stuff. Jesus knows what you need. Jesus knows that you need the money for this or you need the whatever for that. He knows that. He provides that. As long as we're obeying Him. As long as we're trusting Him. He will protect and He will provide. He will give us what we need in the situation. You know, when Bruce Olson was in that camp, the rebel camp, he was still protected. He went through some really nasty things, yeah, but God was still providing for him. In fact, after one session, basically, where they tortured him, because they were trying, the leadership was just trying to get him to break so that he could follow them. And they were putting these crushing logs on his chest and causing internal bleeding, etc. And at one point he needed a blood transfusion. The guerrillas were fighting among themselves to see who would have the honor of donating blood to, as they called him, Papa Grushko. God provides. God provides. So we come to our question. Who do you want to go fishing with? Who do you want to go fishing? Are you a loner? Do you want to go fishing by yourself? Guess what? Life's never going to be successful for you. Maybe in the going out in the pond and catching a fish, but not when you're fishing in ministry. Not if you're trying to do God's will. You can't do it by yourself. We are to be fishers of men, but we can't do it on our own. We must obey, fish where He says, and trust Him to provide the catch, knowing all through it that He's going to protect and provide for us. Well, people, it's Sunday. It's a perfect day to go fishing with Jesus. Father God, I want to thank You for just Your constant provisions, for how You love us, how You guide us, and how You ask us to follow You. Lord, help us to follow You wholeheartedly. Help us, Lord, to sense Your will in our lives, to draw closer to You so that we have the direction. To not make our own plans, Lord, but to ask what Your plans are. What side of the boat should we cast our net on, Lord? Help us to trust You, Lord. And in life, as we reach others through incarnational ministry, as our lives reflect You, Lord, we trust that the nets won't break. That, Lord, what You have provided, the fish You provided for us, will be all that You ask. Just help us, Lord, to be faithful. In Christ's name.